The chandelier light above table 12 looked like trapped stars, cold and expensive, and it turned every glass into a sharp little mirror. Plates sat untouched. A bread basket went soft in the heat. The dining room had gone so quiet, you could hear the slow hiss of the espresso machine behind the half-open service door. Miriam's hands trembled around a small tray with a single cup of tea. Her uniform smelled faintly of lemon polish and steam. She kept her smile pinned on like a badge, even as her eyes flicked down to the spill she had not made. Across from her, Nabil Al-Sayed leaned back in his chair as if the room belonged to him. His suit was the color of midnight. His watch face flashed when he lifted his wrist, bored, amused. He had laughed once already, loud enough to make a nearby couple stop chewing. "Tell her," he said, not looking at Miriam, but at his assistant, "that this tea is not tea. It is warm water pretending." His assistant began to translate, but Miriam didn't need the words. She understood the smile that was not kind. She understood the small tilt of his chin that meant she was invisible. Miriam opened her mouth anyway. Her voice came out thin. "I can bring another, sir. Fresh." Nabil's laugh came again, sharper. "Another? You think another cup changes what you are?" Miriam's shoulders tightened, like she had been tapped on the spine. She held the tray closer, as if it could protect her. Then a voice cut clean through the silence, young and steady. "You don't speak to her that way." Heads turned. Forks paused midair. Someone's chair squeaked on the polished floor. Layla stood beside the service door with a folded napkin in her hand. She wasn't wearing a uniform. She wore jeans and a plain white blouse with the sleeves rolled up. Her hair was pulled back, but a loose strand had slipped out and stuck to her cheek. Her eyes were bright, not with anger exactly, but with something sharper, like a decision. Nabil glanced at her as if she were a sudden noise. Layla stepped closer, and when she spoke again, she did not speak in English. She spoke in Arabic, clear, respectful, but firm. The syllables landed with the clean certainty of someone who had lived with them, not borrowed them. Nabil's smile froze halfway. His assistant blinked, confused. Layla continued, still in Arabic, then slipped into French like it was the same breath, then Spanish, then Mandarin, soft but precise, then back to English. "I speak 5 languages," she said, and her voice did not shake. "So I'm telling you, in every way you might understand, you don't get to laugh at my mother." Nabil stared at her. The dining room held its breath. And then, for the first time, the Arab millionaire looked shocked. If you enjoy stories that feel real and hit deep, take a second to like and subscribe. Nabil's gaze moved from Layla to Miriam, and something changed in the air. Not softer, not kinder yet, but altered, like a door that had been locked had just clicked open. Miriam's fingers tightened around the tray. Her knuckles had gone pale. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor, and also like she wanted to cry, and she would rather die than let anyone see either. Layla reached her mother and gently took the tray, setting it on the nearest service stand with a quiet clink. She placed her palm on Miriam's forearm, warm, grounding. Miriam's skin felt cold through the thin fabric. "Mom," Layla whispered, "go to the back. I'll handle it." Miriam's lips parted. "Layla, don't." Layla gave her a look that said, "I'm already here." Miriam swallowed hard, then nodded once, small and tight, and stepped away, walking stiffly toward the service door, as if the whole room might shatter if she moved too fast. Nabil watched Miriam leave. His assistant leaned in and murmured something, but Nabil didn't answer. His eye stayed on Layla. "You are her daughter," he said in English, as if confirming an odd fact. "Yes. You work here." "No, she does." Layla's chin lifted a fraction. "And she is good at it." Nabil's fingers tapped once on the white tablecloth. A tiny, impatient rhythm. "You speak Arabic?" "I do." "How?" His tone carried suspicion, like he was looking for the trick. Layla didn't rush. She took in the table, the untouched food, the water glasses sweating onto coasters, the heavy silverware arranged like weapons. She caught the faint smell of truffle oil that always hung in places like this, rich and slightly too much, like someone trying hard to impress. My mother has worked in restaurants since I was 10, Layla said. I've spent my life in kitchens and back rooms. I studied languages because it was something I could do with my head, even when everything else was limited. Nabil leaned forward a little now. The bored amusement had drained from his face, replaced by focus that felt like a spotlight. You are a student, he said. Yes. University, translation, and international communication. Layla's fingers curled, then relaxed. I also tutor, and I volunteer at a community center as an interpreter when they need one. Nabil's assistant, a neat woman with a tight bun, finally found her voice. Sir, we should. Nabil lifted his hand without looking at her. The assistant fell silent. Nabil's eyes stayed on Layla. Why are you here tonight? Layla's mouth tightened. Because she texted me. One word. Help. She never does that. Nabil's jaw flexed slightly. The room still listened, pretending not to. He looked down at the teacup as if it had offended him personally. Then he looked back up. I did not intend to, he began. Layla cut in, not loud but sure. You did. You intended to make her feel small. You intended to show power. A few tables away, someone let out a slow breath. A waiter near the bar shifted his weight, eyes wide. Nabil's face hardened, pride rising like a wall. You speak boldly to a stranger. I speak clearly, Layla corrected. They're the difference. Nabil's lips pressed together. For a second, it looked like he might lash out, like the old habit of being obeyed was reaching for control. His shoulders lifted a little, his chest filling. Then his gaze flicked past Layla toward the service door Miriam had gone through, and his breath came out quieter than it went in. Bring her manager, Nabil said to his assistant. The assistant hesitated. Sir. Now. The assistant moved, heels clicking fast across the floor. Layla didn't relax. She didn't trust quick changes. She had lived too long around adults who smiled, promised, and then forgot. A minute later, the restaurant manager appeared, Mr. Hargrove, a thin man with hair combed too carefully, wearing a suit that tried to look expensive but didn't quite fit. He had that look managers get when money is at the table. Polite panic. Mr. Al-Sayed, he said, voice too bright. Is there a problem? We can make adjustments. Yes, Nabil said. There's a problem. Your employee was disrespected. Mr. Hargrove blinked, caught off guard. His eyes slid to Layla, then back to Nabil, searching for the direction the wind was blowing. Nabil continued, still calm, but with an edge. I spoke to her in a way I should not have, and you allowed a room where she had no protection. Mr. Hargrove's mouth opened, then closed. He tried a smile. We take staff care very seriously, sir. Miriam is valued. Layla let out a short breath that almost became a laugh, but she swallowed it. The word value tasted like a lie. Nabil's gaze sharpened. Then you will show it. Not with words. With process. Mr. Hargrove stiffened. Process. Yes, Nabil said. You will document what happened tonight. You will ensure she is not punished for it. You will adjust her schedule if she requests it. You will confirm in writing that her position is secure. Layla's stomach tightened. Writing. That mattered. It was the difference between a promise and proof. Mr. Hargrove nodded too fast. Of course. We can do that. And, Nabil added, you will bring her out, if she wants to, not to be shamed, to be acknowledged. Layla's eyes narrowed. She doesn't owe you that. Nabil turned to her. No, he said quietly. She does not. But I owe her something. A beat passed. Then another. Mr. Hargrove hurried toward the service door like his shoes were on fire. Layla stood still, arms at her sides, fingers cold now. Her heart was thudding, hard enough she could feel it in her throat. She hated being in front of people like this. She hated the attention, but she hated more the look on her mother's face when she felt trapped. Nabil watched Layla the way he watched everything, measuring, assessing, trying to understand the shape of her. You are brave, he said. Layla shook her head once. I'm tired. Nabil's eyebrows lifted slightly at that, as if it was an answer he didn't expect. Mr. Hargrove returned with Miriam. Miriam's eyes were red, but her face was set. She held her hands clasped together in front of her, fingers twisting. When she stepped out, the dining room did that strange thing where people pretend they are not looking while looking. Miriam stopped a few feet from the table, keeping distance like it was safety. Nabil stood. He did not extend his hand. He did not smile like a king. He simply stood upright, and his posture changed, less lounging, more formal, as if he remembered other people were human. "Miriam," he said, "I spoke to you with disrespect. I laughed at you. That was wrong." Miriam's eyes flicked to Layla, then back to Nabil. She didn't know what to do with this. Apologies from rich men often came with hooks, often came with traps. Nabil continued, "You were doing your work. I made it personal. I made you small. That was my pride." Miriam swallowed. The room was so quiet you could hear someone's spoon clink against porcelain in the back. "I accept your apology," Miriam said, voice low. It sounded like she was forcing the words out of a tight place in her chest. "But I don't want trouble." Layla's lips pressed together. Trouble always found people like them, even when they didn't ask for it. Nabil's gaze softened slightly. "Then there will be no trouble for you," he said. "Only correction for me." He turned to Mr. Hargrove. "You will handle what I asked tonight." Mr. Hargrove nodded, sweat at his temple. "Yes, sir." Nabil reached into his jacket and pulled out a simple card, placing it on the table. No dramatic flourish, just a rectangle of paper with a name and a number. "This is for you," he said to Miriam. "Not to call me for money, not for favors. If anyone here punishes you, you call. If anyone here speaks to you like you are less, you call." Miriam stared at the card as if it might bite. Layla watched Nabil's hands. They were steady, clean nails, no shaking. But she noticed something else. When he put the card down, he didn't push it toward them like a bribe. He left it where it was, like an option, not a demand. Layla didn't trust him yet, but she registered the detail. Nabil looked at Layla again. "And you," he said, "you surprised me." Layla didn't smile. "Good. Maybe you needed it." For a moment, Nabil's mouth twitched, as if he might laugh. Then he caught himself. The laugh did not come. Instead, something like respect settled on his face, unfamiliar but real. He sat back down. "Bring the check," he told his assistant. The assistant stood quickly, relieved to have a task. Nabil glanced at the untouched food. "And pack this. For the staff. Not as charity. As apology." Mr. Hargrove nodded like he would do anything to keep the room calm. Layla guided Miriam back toward the service door. Miriam's steps were shaky now that the moment was passing. When they reached the hallway, away from the dining room's eyes, Miriam's shoulders collapsed, just a little. "Why did you do that?" Miriam whispered, voice breaking. "Layla, you could have. He could have." Layla wrapped her arms around her mother, tight and quick, like holding something together before it fell apart. Miriam smelled of soap and hot plates and the faint sweetness of the lotion she used, because her hands cracked from washing. "I did it because no one else would," Layla said into her mother's hair. "And because I'm done watching you swallow shame for tips." Miriam's breath hitched. She tried to laugh through tears. "You always had a strong mouth." "I always had you," Layla said. "That's why." They stood like that for a few seconds. Then Miriam pulled back, wiping her cheeks with the edge of her sleeve, embarrassed at her own softness. "You should go," Miriam said. "Go home. Don't get involved with those people." Layla nodded, but her eye stayed on the door that led back into the dining room. "I'll go," she said. "But if he calls or writes or sends anything, you tell me." Miriam nodded reluctantly. Layla left through the staff exit, stepping into the night air that smelled of sea salt and car exhaust. The city outside the hotel was alive. Horns in the distance, the low rumble of buses, voices spilling out of open storefronts. Neon signs blinked. A breeze lifted the hair at the back of her neck. She walked fast, heart still pounding, hands shoved into her pockets. She told herself it was over. But the next morning, it wasn't. The next morning, Miriam didn't come home after her shift. Layla sat at their small kitchen table, laptop open for her online lecture, but her eyes kept sliding to the clock. The kitchen was cramped. 2 chairs, 1 table, a kettle that whistled too loud. The walls had old paint that had yellowed at the corners. A stack of textbooks sat by the window, held down by a chipped mug because the window didn't close all the way and the wind liked to flip pages. Layla's phone buzzed. Not her mother. A message from an unknown number. It was short. I owe you an apology as well. Coffee. Public place. Your choice. No name. But Layla knew. Her stomach tightened. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. The easy answer was no. The safe answer was ignore. People like him didn't stay in your life unless you let them, and letting them always came with cost. Her phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. Still at work. Meeting. Don't worry. Love you. Layla exhaled, slow. Meeting. Miriam hated meetings. Meetings meant trouble. Meetings meant managers using polite words to hide sharp consequences. Layla typed back, "Call me when you can," then stared at the first message again. She didn't want coffee. She wanted her mother safe. She wanted to make sure last night didn't become a punishment today. Layla typed, "Why are you messaging me?" A reply came quickly, "Because your mother deserves peace. I want to ensure it." Layla's eyes narrowed. Peace from him. Sounded like something he could buy and hand out. She didn't like it. She typed, "Don't involve my mother." The reply paused longer this time. "I am already involved. I made myself involved when I spoke as I did." Layla swallowed. Then she typed, "If you want to ensure she is treated fairly, do it through proper channels. Not through me." Another pause. Then, "I will. But I would like to speak with you. Not to persuade. To understand." Layla almost laughed. Understand. People like him didn't understand. They collected facts and called it understanding. Her phone buzzed again. Her mother, this time calling. Layla answered immediately. "Mom." Miriam's voice came through low and careful, like she was in a hallway. "I'm okay. Don't panic." "I wasn't panicking." Layla lied. Miriam sighed. "Mr. Hargrove called a meeting this morning. He apologized. He wrote something down. He said my job is safe. He changed my section, so I won't be placed on those private tables alone." Layla's grip eased a little. "He wrote it?" "Yes." Miriam sounded surprised by that part. "He printed it. Signed it. Human Resources will put it in my file." Layla's chest loosened. That mattered. "And," Miriam continued, voice lower, "that man, Mr. Al-Sayed, he sent someone. Not money. A letter. It's in an envelope. It says he will cover any legal support if the hotel retaliates." Layla's jaw clenched. "That's still power." "I know." Miriam's voice was tired. "But Layla, I don't think he is doing it to trap us." He looked not proud. Last night, he looked embarrassed. Layla stared at the kitchen wall, where a small crack ran from the ceiling down like a thin scar. "Embarrassed people can still be dangerous," she said. Miriam gave a small laugh that had no humor. "Yes, but we can't live afraid of every embarrassed rich man." Layla swallowed. "Are you coming home soon?" "In an hour," Miriam said. Then her voice softened. "Layla, I'm proud of you. But don't fight everyone. Choose your battles." Layla's throat tightened. She blinked hard. "Okay," she said. When Miriam hung up, Layla sat for a long time, staring at the message from Nabil. She didn't want to meet him, but she also didn't want the story of last night to grow teeth in the dark. She typed, "Public place. 15 minutes. Noon. Corner cafe near the library." He replied almost instantly. "Agreed." At noon, Layla chose a cafe with glass windows and bright lights, the kind of place where people worked on laptops and argued quietly about books. The smell of roasted coffee beans hit her as soon as she walked in, warm and bitter. A bell chimed above the door. She picked a table near the window, back to the wall. She ordered tea, not coffee. Tea felt like control. She held the cup with both hands, letting the heat steady her. When Nabil walked in, the cafe seemed to shift around him, not because it was loud, but because he carried attention without asking. He wore no suit today. He wore dark trousers and a simple coat, still expensive but quieter. His hair was neatly trimmed. His eye scanned the room quickly, then found her. He approached slowly, hands visible, not reaching. He stopped at a polite distance. "Layla," he said. Layla didn't stand. "Mr. Al-Said." He sat across from her only after she nodded, small. He didn't remove his coat immediately, like he might leave any second. That detail, hesitation, made him seem slightly less untouchable. A server came over, cheerful. "What can I get you?" Nabil glanced at Layla's tea, then said, "Tea, please." "Plain." The server nodded and left. Layla watched him. His face looked different in daylight. In the hotel, under chandeliers, he had looked carved. Here, with sunlight on his cheek, she could see a faint tiredness under his eyes, like he didn't sleep well. He clasped his hands on the table. His fingers were long, steady. No rings. "I came to apologize," he said. "You already did," Layla replied. He nodded once. "Yes, but not to you." Layla's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I humiliated your mother," he said. "You defended her. Instead of being grateful, I felt challenged. That is my shame." Layla held his gaze. "Why did you do it?" Nabil's jaw tightened. He looked out the window for a second, as if searching for the right angle to explain himself, without making himself look worse. "In my world," he said slowly, "people serve because they are paid. They smile because they must. The line between the person and the service becomes blurred. That is not an excuse. It is a sickness I have seen in myself for a long time." Layla said nothing. She didn't want a speech. She wanted proof. Nabil continued. "Last night, I laughed because I believed I could, because no one stops me. Your voice stopped me." Layla's fingers tightened around her cup. "Stopping you once doesn't change your world." "No," Nabil admitted, "but it changes mine." The server returned with his tea. Nabil thanked her quietly. The server smiled and moved away, unaware she had just witnessed a billionaire practicing humility like it was a new language. Layla leaned back slightly. "So what do you want?" Nabil didn't flinch at the directness. "I want to ensure your mother is safe. And I want to offer you work." Layla's eyes narrowed. "No." Nabil's eyebrows lifted. Layla continued. "I'm not interested in becoming your trophy interpreter. I'm not interested in being pulled into your world because you felt embarrassed once." Nabil's lips pressed together. "Fair." Layla blinked. She hadn't expected that. He lifted his teacup, took a small sip, then set it down carefully. "You are right to be suspicious," he said. "I do not want to pull you into my world as decoration. I want to pay for skill. That is all." Layla held her silence. The cafe's background noise hummed, milk steaming, chairs scraping, someone laughing softly at a joke. Outside, people walked past with scarves and bags, living ordinary lives. Nabil leaned forward slightly, his voice lower. "In 2 weeks, I host a meeting here. Not a party. Business. Several international partners. There will be contracts, negotiations, multiple languages. My usual team is competent, but last night I saw a clarity in you. You switch languages without losing your meaning. That is rare." Layla's mouth tightened. Praise felt like bait. "I can hire professionals," she said. "You can," Nabil agreed. "And I do. But I also saw something else. You were not impressed by money. You were impressed by respect." Layla's pulse flickered. She didn't like being read. Nabil continued. "I want to hire you for one job. One day. Clear contract. Clear pay. You choose the boundaries. If you say no, I will not push." Layla stared at his hands, then back to his face. "Why are you doing this?" Nabil's throat moved as he swallowed. "Because I need people around me who tell me the truth, and because I owe your mother more than a letter. If you work with me, it is not to save me. It is to make sure your mother sees that her daughter's skill is valued properly, by the rules of work, not by pity. Layla exhaled slowly through her nose. She felt the trap possibilities. She also felt the opportunity. One job could pay a month of rent. One job could buy time. But money always came with weight. What are the terms? Layla asked, careful. Nabil's eyes sharpened with focus, not triumph. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a slim folder. He placed it on the table, but didn't push it toward her. A standard independent contractor agreement, he said. I will have it reviewed by your advisor if you want, or by a lawyer. You can mark changes. You can refuse. Layla didn't touch it yet. And my mother? Separate, Nabil said quickly. Her protection is not tied to you. I have already requested documentation from the hotel. I will follow up through proper channels. You do not owe me for that. Layla studied his face for cracks. People could say the right thing and still mean the wrong thing, but his tone held something like discipline, like he was forcing himself not to be the old version. Layla finally touched the folder, light, like it might be hot. She flipped through. The language was formal, but not cruel. Pay rate was high. Hours listed. Confidentiality clause, standard. But she noticed a paragraph that made her stomach tighten. Public association. It was vague. She pointed to it. This needs to be clearer. Nabil nodded. Yes, remove it if you want. Layla blinked again. Just like that. Nabil's mouth curved slightly. Not a smile exactly, more like acceptance. You are not an employee. You are not trapped. That is the point. Layla set the folder down. I'll review it with my program advisor, she said. If the terms are clean, I'll consider it. Nabil nodded once. Good. Layla sipped her tea. It had cooled a little. The bitterness sat on her tongue. One more thing, Layla said. Yes. Don't contact my mother directly, Layla said. Not unless she asks. She doesn't need you in her space. She needs a job to be fair. Nabil's gaze held steady. Agreed. Layla's shoulders eased by a millimeter. Not trust, but a small notch of safety. As they stood to leave, Nabil didn't reach for her hand. He didn't ask personal questions. He didn't do anything that felt like claiming. He simply said, "Thank you for meeting me." Layla nodded. "Don't make me regret it." Nabil looked at her, and for a moment, the man who had laughed in a chandelier-lit room looked like someone who had never been spoken to that way before. "I will try," he said. The day of the meeting arrived with clean morning light and a wind that made street signs rattle softly. Layla wore a simple navy blazer and black pants, clothes that made her feel professional without trying to pretend she belonged to wealth. Her shoes were comfortable, because she refused to suffer for appearances. She arrived early at the conference venue, another hotel, not the one where Miriam worked. This one was quieter, more private. The lobby smelled like fresh flowers and citrus. The carpet muted footsteps. The air conditioning hummed low, constant. Nabil's assistant greeted her at the door of the conference room. The assistant's name was Hannah. Layla learned it from the badge clipped to her jacket. Hannah's eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "You're Layla," Hannah said. Layla nodded. Hannah handed her a visitor badge and a neatly printed agenda. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Al-Sayed requested that you be treated as a consultant. You have access to the room and to the break space. If anyone speaks to you disrespectfully, tell me." Layla studied Hannah. That last line wasn't corporate politeness. It sounded personal, like Hannah had seen disrespect too. "Okay," Layla said. Inside the conference room, the table was long and polished, with microphones set at intervals. Water bottles sat in perfect alignment. A screen at the front displayed a neutral logo for the event. Just shapes, no real names. The chairs were heavy, the kind that made you sit up straight without meaning to. Layla laid her notebook down, checked the interpreter headset system, tested microphones. She moved with quiet confidence. This was her world, language, meaning, precision. Money didn't impress her here. Only clarity did. When Nabil arrived, he didn't sweep in like a ruler. He walked in, greeted her with a nod, and said, "Good morning, Layla." Good morning, she replied. He glanced at the setup. Is everything ready? Yes. He paused. If at any point you feel uncomfortable, you leave. You don't explain. You just leave. Layla looked at him carefully. You're serious? Nabil nodded. Yes. The meeting began. Partners arrived, 2 men speaking French, a woman speaking Mandarin, another man speaking Spanish, and one older gentleman who spoke Arabic in a formal dialect that carried authority in its rhythm. Layla listened, translated, tracked subtle shifts in tone. She noticed the way someone said maybe but meant never. She caught the small laugh that covered a threat. She watched hands as much as faces, who tapped impatiently, who folded arms, who kept palms open. Nabil spoke less than she expected. When he did, his voice was calm, and he waited for the translation, not interrupting, not rushing. He watched people's reactions. He listened. At one point, the older Arabic-speaking gentleman said something sharp, dismissing a proposal with a phrase that could be polite or insulting, depending on how it was delivered. Layla translated it into English with accuracy, but she softened nothing. She kept the edge, because hiding it would only create confusion later. Nabil's eyes flicked to her. Not angry, grateful. He nodded slightly, like, yes, tell it as it is. The meeting went long. Breaks came. Coffee cups emptied. Pens clicked. Outside the room, the hallway smelled of carpet shampoo and the faint metal scent of elevators. At the end, as people stood and gathered their folders, the French-speaking partner turned to Layla and said, in French, "Your work is excellent. Who trained you?" Layla replied in French, "Life and discipline." The partner laughed, impressed. Nabil watched that exchange and didn't insert himself. He let her own the moment. When the room finally emptied, Hannah approached with a small envelope. "Your payment," she said, "as agreed, and the updated contract with a clause removed. Per your notes. Signed." Layla took it. The envelope was heavier than paper. Real weight. Nabil remained by the table, watching her pack her notebook. "You were precise," he said. Layla didn't smile. "That's my job." Nabil nodded. "I want to offer you more work, but only if you want." Layla's breath slowed. Here it was. The pull. The temptation. "One job at a time," she said. Nabil held up his hand in agreement. One job at a time. As Layla left the hotel, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt alert. Money in her bag felt like both relief and risk. She walked to the bus stop, blending into the city again, and she told herself, again, to keep distance. Then the next obstacle came from a direction she didn't expect. 2 days later, Miriam's manager cut her hours. He did it with a smile. He did it with soft language. He did it in a way that sounded like a scheduled change, but felt like punishment. Miriam came home with her shoulders tight and her lips pressed into a line. Layla saw it immediately. "What happened?" Layla asked, even before Miriam sat down. Miriam tried to shake it off. "Nothing. Just slower season." Layla stared at her mother's uniform, still smelling of kitchen heat and detergent. Miriam's hands had new red cracks along the knuckles. Layla didn't move. "Mom." Miriam's eyes filled, but she blinked it back. "They moved me to lunch shifts. Less tips. They said I'm too visible now." Layla felt heat rise behind her eyes, sharp and immediate. Too visible. Miriam sank into the chair, exhausted. "They aren't firing me. They're just squeezing." Layla's jaw clenched. This was how it happened. Not dramatic. Not with screaming. With slow tightening until you couldn't breathe. Layla reached into her bag and pulled out the copy of the documentation Nabil had insisted on. It was folded, but still crisp. She placed it on the table. "They signed this," Layla said. Miriam looked at it like it was a fragile thing. "Yes." Layla pointed to the part about retaliation and fair scheduling practices. "This matters." Miriam's voice trembled. "Layla, I don't want you calling him. I don't want to owe him." Layla exhaled hard. "It's not owing if it's enforcing what they signed." Miriam shook her head, scared. "People like that don't help for free." Layla stared at her mother. and her chest tightened with a familiar ache. The ache of being the child who had grown up too fast. The ache of being the one who carried adult problems with the student backpack. "I won't let them punish you quietly," Layla said, voice low. Miriam's eyes softened and sharpened at once. "And I won't let you put yourself in danger because of me." They stared at each other. Love and fear pressed between them like a wall. That night, Layla didn't call Nabil. She didn't want to. Instead, she went to the restaurant's human resources office in the morning, wearing her blazer, bringing the signed document, bringing her mother's scheduled changes, bringing dates. The HR office smelled like printer ink and cheap air freshener. A small fake plant sat in the corner, dust on its leaves. The woman at the desk smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "We can't discuss employee details with family," the woman said. Layla kept her voice calm. "Then discuss policy. Here is a signed document from management acknowledging protection from retaliation after an incident. Here are the scheduling changes. Here is the timeline. I'm asking what the policy is for staff who report disrespect from guests." The woman's smile tightened. "Are you a lawyer?" "No," Layla said. "I'm a translator. I know what words mean, and I know what retaliation means." The woman's eyes flicked to the papers. She shifted in her chair. Layla continued. "My mother will file a formal complaint if needed. I'm here to understand the process before she does." The HR woman sighed like Layla was a headache. "We can schedule a meeting." Layla nodded. "Schedule it, and put it in writing." As Layla walked out, her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline buzzing under her skin. She hated this kind of confrontation. It felt like pushing against a wall made of air. Nothing solid to grab, just polite resistance. That afternoon, Miriam got a message. Meeting scheduled for Friday. Layla didn't relax. Meetings could be traps too. Thursday night, Layla's phone buzzed again. A message from Hannah. "I heard about the scheduling change. Mr. Al-Sayed did not contact your mother. He asked me to check discreetly. If you want support, we can connect you to legal counsel familiar with workplace retaliation. No obligation." Layla stared at the message, heart tightening. Nabil hadn't called. He had respected the boundary. He had used Hannah as a buffer. That detail mattered. Layla typed back, "Thank you. I'll handle HR first." Hannah replied, "Understood." Friday came. Layla went with Miriam, sitting in the HR meeting room with fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. Mr. Hargrove sat across the table with HR. He smiled too much. Miriam kept her hands folded tightly in her lap. HR began with polite words. "We value Miriam's contributions. We strive for fairness." Layla listened, taking notes. She caught the tiny shifts. When Mr. Hargrove said business needs instead of mistake. When HR said adjustments instead of punishment. Layla waited until they finished talking in circles. Then she slid the signed document across the table. "This was signed," Layla said calmly. "It mentions protection and stability. The scheduling change happened immediately after the incident. Explain that." Mr. Hargrove's smile faltered. "It's not connected." Layla kept her face neutral. "Then show the staffing analysis. Show the business reason. Show the scheduled data for the last 8 weeks." HR blinked. "We don't." Layla leaned forward slightly. "If you don't have documentation, then you can't claim it's unrelated. You can only claim it's convenient." Silence. Miriam's breath came shaky beside her. Mr. Hargrove cleared his throat. "We can adjust. Move her back to dinner shifts 2 nights a week." Layla didn't nod. "All scheduled dinner shifts. As before. Or you can explain to a labor mediator why you signed a protection agreement and then reduced her income." The HR woman's eyes narrowed. "Who advised you?" Layla met her gaze. "Reality." Mr. Hargrove swallowed. "Fine," he said too quickly. "We'll restore her schedule." Miriam's shoulders sagged with relief, so deep it looked like pain. Layla didn't celebrate. "Put it in writing," she said. Today, they did. A printed paper. A signature. A date. When Miriam and Layla stepped outside, the air felt colder, sharper, cleaner. Miriam held the paper like it was a life raft. "You didn't have to fight like that," Miriam whispered. Layla looked at her mother's cracked hands. "Yes," she said softly, "I did." That night, Layla expected to feel light. Instead, she felt heavy. Because after the victory, the fear crept in. Not fear of the restaurant. Fear of being seen. Fear of being noticed by powerful people, and then remembered. Layla sat on her bed with her laptop open, trying to focus on a translation assignment. Her room was small. One bed, one desk, one closet with a door that stuck. A string of cheap lights hung above the desk. Half of them burned out. Outside, the city noise kept breathing, cars, distant music, a dog barking once. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Not Hannah this time. "Nabil, I heard the schedule was restored." "Good." Layla stared at it. She hadn't told him. Hannah must have, or he had asked. But he hadn't intervened directly. He had simply acknowledged. Layla typed, "We handled it." A pause. Then, "You handled it well." Layla didn't reply. Praise felt dangerous. Her phone buzzed again. "I would like to invite you to a language charity dinner next month. Not to speak, just to attend. But only if you want. No pressure." Layla frowned. Charity dinner. That sounded like the same wealthy world wearing a nice mask. She typed, "No." Nabil replied, "Understood." And that was it. No argument. No guilt. No pushing. Layla set her phone down and stared at the ceiling. She didn't know what to do with a powerful person who could accept no. Weeks passed. Miriam's schedule stabilized. Tips improved. The restaurant staff began to treat Miriam with a new kind of caution, part respect, part fear. Miriam hated that. She wanted normal. She wanted to be invisible enough to be safe, but valued enough to breathe. Layla stayed busy. Classes, tutoring, volunteer interpreting at the community center, where the chairs were plastic and the coffee was weak and the gratitude was real. She interpreted for parents at school meetings, for patients at clinic appointments, for immigrants filling out forms they didn't understand. She learned that language wasn't just words, it was dignity, it was access, it was survival. One afternoon, at the community center, Layla arrived to find the director, Mr. Sadiq, standing near the entrance with a worried face. "Layla," he said, "we have a problem." Layla's stomach dropped. "What?" He lowered his voice. "The family came in. The father was arrested this morning. They don't understand the paperwork. The mother is shaking. We need Arabic and French. The legal aid volunteer is late." Layla grabbed her notebook. "Where are they?" Mr. Sadiq led her to a small room with a table and mismatched chairs. A woman sat there with a scarf wrapped around her hair, eyes red, hands clenched around a crumpled paper. Two children sat close to her. One swinging legs too fast like nervous energy, had nowhere to go. Layla greeted them softly in Arabic. The woman's eyes widened with relief. She began speaking quickly, words tumbling out, panic threaded through every sentence. Layla listened, translated carefully, asked questions, slowed the pace. She saw the fear in the woman's hands, the way the fingers kept twisting the paper until it tore slightly. As Layla worked, the door opened. A man stepped in, tall, calm, wearing a plain coat. "Nabil." Layla froze for half a second, then her face hardened. She stood, stepping into the hallway immediately, shutting the door behind her. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so the family wouldn't hear. Nabil's eyes widened slightly. "I am sorry," he said quickly. "I did not know you would be here. I came because Mr. Sadiq asked for help." Layla stared at him. "You know Mr. Sadiq?" Nabil nodded. "Yes. I donate to the center. Quietly. Not publicly. I came today because they asked if I could connect them with the legal aid contact. I did not come to—" He stopped. "I did not come to disturb you." Layla's pulse raced. The community center was her safe place, her ground. Seeing him here felt like someone had stepped into her house without knocking. She forced herself to breathe. "You should have told me," she said. You said you did not want me contacting you unless necessary. Nabil replied. I believe this was not about you. It is about them. He gestured gently toward the door. They need help. Layla's jaw clenched. He was right, and she hated that he was right. Layla's eyes searched his face for arrogance. She found concern, restraint. What did you bring? She asked. Nabil reached into his coat and pulled out a folder. Contact information. A lawyer who provides pro bono support for cases like this. Also a translator line if needed. But his gaze flicked to Layla. You are already here. Layla exhaled sharply, frustrated with the world, not just him. Fine, she said, but you don't go in there and take over. You don't make this about you. Nabil's voice softened. Agreed. They went back in. Nabil sat down quietly, not at the head of the table, but to the side. He listened. He waited for Layla to translate. When he spoke gently, and he looked at the mother, not at Layla. He didn't promise miracles. He didn't say, I'll fix it. He said, here is the process. Here is who will call. Here is what the timeline might be. Here is what I can do, and what I cannot do. Layla watched him explain boundaries to someone else, and it unsettled her, because it looked like he had actually learned something. After an hour, the lawyer called back. Nabil handed the phone to the mother, letting Layla interpret. Plans formed. A little air entered the room. When the family finally left, the mother took Layla's hands and kissed them lightly, gratitude spilling out through tears. Layla felt her throat tighten. Then the room emptied. Layla turned to Nabil. You didn't tell me you support this place. Nabil shrugged slightly, a small gesture that seemed almost human. It is not something to announce. Layla narrowed her eyes. Why not? Nabil's gaze dropped to the table, then back up. Because people mistake help for control. I have controlled enough. Layla's chest tightened with something that wasn't anger. It was caution mixed with surprise. Mr. Sadiq appeared at the door, smiling warmly. Thank you both, he said. Layla, you were excellent as always. Mr. Al-Said, thank you for being available. Layla forced a nod. Of course. Nabil stood. Thank you, Mr. Sadiq. As Nabil and Layla walked out of the center together, the late afternoon sun hit the sidewalk in golden strips. Children shouted in a nearby playground. A vendor grilled meat on a street corner, smoke curling up into the air, carrying spices that made Layla's stomach grumble. They stopped at the curb, the city moving around them like water around stones. Layla crossed her arms. You keep showing up. Nabil nodded, accepting the accusation. I do. Layla's eyes sharpened. Why? Nabil looked at her for a long moment, then said, Because you are in places that matter. Layla felt heat rise to her cheeks, not flattery exactly, more like irritation at how easily words could touch something inside her. That's not an answer, she said. Nabil's mouth curved slightly. It is the best one I have right now. Layla's phone buzzed. A message from Miriam. Are you coming home? I made rice. Layla's shoulders softened a fraction. Home. Safety. I'm leaving, Layla said, stepping back. Nabil nodded. I will not walk you. Layla paused. Why not? Because you did not ask, Nabil said simply. Layla stared at him, then turned and walked away, her heart beating too fast for a normal afternoon. That night, over rice and stew, Miriam talked about a customer who had left a generous tip and said, You have a kind spirit. Miriam rolled her eyes at it, but her voice sounded lighter than it had in weeks. Layla listened, smiling softly, but her mind kept flicking back to Nabil's words. Places that matter. She didn't want to matter to him. She didn't want to be seen as a symbol. She didn't want to be pulled into someone else's story. She wanted her own. A week later, the mistake happened. It didn't happen with shouting. It didn't happen with drama. It happened with one quiet choice that crossed a line. Layla's university announced a competitive scholarship opportunity, funding for a semester abroad to sharpen language immersion. It was everything Layla wanted. It was also something Layla thought she could never afford, even if she got in. The scholarship covered tuition and housing, but not travel and certain fees. The remaining amount was still huge to her. Layla didn't tell Miriam. Her mother already carried too much. Layla decided she would figure it out herself. She worked extra tutoring hours, late evenings, the kind that made her head ache and her eyes burn. She skipped lunches. She took on extra interpreting shifts. Then one afternoon, Hannah called her. "Mr. Al-Sayed asked me to invite you to a small meeting," Hannah said. "He wants to discuss a new consulting opportunity. Paid, if you're interested." Layla hesitated. "What kind of opportunity?" "Translation support for an education initiative," Hannah said carefully. "It's not heavy. Mostly planning documents." Layla's mind immediately jumped to the scholarship gap. Money. Relief. Time. When? Layla asked. "Tomorrow," Hannah said. 1 hour. Public office. Layla agreed. The next day, Layla arrived at a quiet office building with clean floors and soft lighting. The air smelled faintly of wood and coffee. No flashy art. No loud displays. Just calm. Nabil met her in a conference room with a simple table. He wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him, older, with silver hair and sharp eyes. She introduced herself as Dr. Noor Haddad, an education consultant. Layla sat alert. Nabil spoke first. "Layla, thank you for coming. This is Dr. Haddad. We are working on a multilingual training program for service staff across several hotels in the city. The goal is to reduce misunderstandings and improve dignity on both sides." Layla's eyebrows lifted. That sounded sensible. Dr. Haddad leaned forward, her voice crisp. "We want someone who understands service work and language, someone who can make training materials real, not academic." Layla listened, intrigued. Nabil added, "You would be paid. It would be part-time. You can decline." Layla nodded slowly. This was different. It wasn't her translating at luxury tables. It was shaping something that could help people like her mother. "How did you come up with this?" Layla asked, skeptical. Nabil's gaze didn't flinch. "Because I do not want to be the man I was that night," he said. "And because changing myself is not enough if the system stays the same." Layla felt something shift. This was the kind of action that actually mattered. Not a donation. Not a letter. A program. She agreed to review the details. As the meeting continued, Dr. Haddad asked about Layla's background, her schedule, her workload. Layla answered carefully. She didn't mention the scholarship. She didn't want to. Then, near the end, Nabil said, "One more thing." Layla's stomach tightened. Nabil slid a new folder across the table. "I asked Hannah to research your university's programs," he said. "I learned you applied for an immersion scholarship. I also learned the gap. I would like to cover it." Layla froze. The room went quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Layla's voice came out sharp. "No." Nabil's brows pulled together. "Layla." "No," she repeated louder. Her hands went cold. "That's not your business." Dr. Haddad's eyes flicked between them, cautious. Nabil's voice stayed calm, but there was tension in it. "You need support. This is not charity. It is investment in your skill." Layla stood so fast the chair legs scraped against the floor. The sound was harsh in the quiet room. "You crossed a line," Layla said, breathing hard. "You dug into my life. You used information without asking. You're trying to buy your redemption by paying for me." Nabil's jaw tightened. "That is not." Layla cut him off, eyes bright with anger and something like fear. "You said you wouldn't trap me. And now you're handing me a folder like I should be grateful. Do you know what that does to people like us? It makes every achievement feel rented." Nabil stood too, slower. His voice dropped. "I did not mean to take your dignity." "But you did," Layla snapped. "You think money fixes everything. You think because you feel guilty, you get to reach into my future." Nabil's face tightened, pride flaring. "I am offering help, not control." Layla laughed once, bitter. "You don't know the difference." Dr. Haddad cleared her throat gently. Perhaps this conversation should pause. Layla grabbed her bag. "I'm leaving." Nabil's voice sharpened. Layla, wait. Layla stopped at the door, hand on the handle. She didn't turn. Do not contact my mother, she said, voice trembling now. Do not contact me. If you want to do your program, do it, but leave me out of your guilt. Then she left, the door closing behind her with a soft click that sounded too gentle for how hard her heart was pounding. Outside, the sky looked too bright, like the world didn't understand what just broke. Layla walked fast, then faster, until she reached a bus stop and sat down hard on the bench. Her hands shook. Her throat felt tight, like she had swallowed glass. She hated him for making her want to help. She hated herself for almost taking it. She hated the way her pride and her need fought inside her like two animals. When she got home, Miriam looked up from the kitchen, surprised. You're early. Layla forced her face neutral. Class got canceled. Miriam studied her. Mothers know. Miriam's eyes narrowed slightly. You're lying. Layla's chest tightened. She didn't want to dump it on her mother. Miriam had worked all day on her feet. Miriam deserved peace. But the truth leaked out anyway. He offered to pay for my scholarship gap, Layla said, voice stiff. Miriam froze, spoon in hand. What? Layla's voice rose. He went into my life. He found out. He offered like it was nothing, like he could just fix it. Miriam's eyes widened with fear and anger. Why would he do that? Because he thinks money is a bandage, Layla said. Because he wants to feel like a good person. Miriam's face tightened. And what did you say? I said no, Layla said, too quickly. Miriam set the spoon down slowly. And Layla's throat tightened. And I hated that I had to. Miriam's eyes softened, and in that softness was something painful, understanding. Miriam walked over and took Layla's hands. Her mother's palms were rough and warm. Layla, Miriam said quietly. Sometimes help is not shame. Layla's eyes filled, frustrated tears she refused to let fall. But it will feel like it, she whispered. It will feel like I didn't earn it. Miriam squeezed her hands. You earned everything you have already. Help doesn't erase that. Layla looked away. He didn't ask. He just offered, like he owned the idea of my future. Miriam nodded slowly. That part is wrong, she said. That part is control wearing kindness. Layla exhaled, relieved her mother saw it too. Miriam touched Layla's cheek lightly. But promise me something. Layla swallowed. What? Don't let pride become a cage, Miriam said. Pride can protect you, but it can also trap you. Layla's breath hitched. She nodded once, small. Still, Layla didn't contact Nabil. Days passed. Weeks. Layla threw herself into work. She applied for other small grants. She begged for extra tutoring hours. She stayed up late writing scholarship essays, crafting every sentence like it could carry her across an ocean. The immersion program deadline approached like a train. And then, 2 days before the final confirmation date, Layla got an email. Her scholarship application was accepted. She stared at the screen, heart pounding with joy and terror. Then she read the details. She still needed the travel funds. The gap remained. The clock was still ticking. Layla closed her laptop and put her head in her hands. Miriam found her like that, quiet at the kitchen table, shoulders tight. Miriam didn't speak immediately. She put a cup of tea in front of Layla, the steam curling up gently. The smell was comforting. Accept it, Miriam asked softly. Layla nodded, eyes wet. Yes. Miriam smiled, proud and aching. My girl. Layla swallowed. But I can't. I can't afford the flight and the fees. Not in 2 days. Miriam's smile faded. The two of them sat in silence, tea steaming between them like a small, fragile hope. Miriam's voice came quietly. We could borrow. Layla shook her head fast. No. We drown. Miriam looked down at her hands. Then we let it go. Layla's chest tightened. Let it go. Let the dream go because the world had a price tag. Layla stood abruptly, pacing in the small kitchen, the chair scraping. I can't, she whispered. I can't keep doing everything right and still lose. Miriam's eyes filled. I know. Layla stopped, breathing hard. She looked at her mother, and her anger shifted, away from Nabil, away from the system, toward the helplessness that had lived with them for years. She pulled out her phone. Miriam's eyes widened. Layla. Layla's voice shook. I'm not asking him. I'm setting a boundary. I'm negotiating like an adult. If he wants to help, he helps on my terms. Miriam's throat moved as she swallowed. Are you sure? Layla's eyes were fierce. No, she said honestly, but I'm done letting fear decide for me. Layla texted Hannah first, not Nabil. Tell him I'll meet. One time. Public. And I decide the terms. Hannah replied within minutes. Understood. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Same cafe near the library? Layla typed. Yes. That night, Layla barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the folder sliding across the table, the feeling of being cornered by generosity. In the morning, she wore the same navy blazer. She braided her hair tight. She brought a printed list of scholarship fees and deadlines, and a sheet of paper with her own terms written clearly. She arrived early. The cafe smelled the same. Roasted coffee, sugar, warm bread. The sunlight through the windows made dust motes float like tiny planets. Nabil arrived on time, alone this time. He paused when he saw her, as if unsure what version of her he would meet. Layla didn't let him guess. She stood as he approached and said, Sit. Nabil sat. Layla stayed standing for a second, then sat too, placing her papers on the table like a shield. Nabil's eyes flicked to them. Layla, he began, voice careful. I owe you an apology. Layla nodded once. Yes. Nabil exhaled slowly. I should not have researched your scholarship without permission. I should not have offered it like a gift. That was my control. Layla watched him closely. His voice had no defensiveness this time, just ownership. Layla sat back slightly. Good, she said. Now listen. Nabil nodded. Layla slid her sheet forward. These are my terms. Nabil looked down and read silently. Layla spoke as he read, voice steady. If you want to fund the gap, you do it through the university's official channel. Direct payment. Not to me. Not to my mother. Not in cash. No public mention. No social media. No speeches. No dinner invitation. No expectation of future work. Nabil's eyes lifted. He didn't look offended. He looked surprised by the clarity. Layla continued, I will sign a simple acknowledgement that funds were received through the university. If they require it, I will not sign anything that ties me to you. If you ever bring this up to my mother or to anyone as if it's proof you're good, we're done. Completely. Nabil held her gaze. That is fair, he said. Layla blinked. And, she added, voice tightening slightly, you never dig into my personal life again without asking. Not through assistance. Not through research. If you want to know something, you ask me directly, and I can say no. Nabil nodded once. Agreed. Layla's throat tightened. She hadn't expected agreement so quickly. She had expected negotiation. Pushback. Pride. Nabil reached into his coat and pulled out a plain envelope. He didn't slide it toward her. He held it, as if waiting for her next instruction. This contains a letter to the university finance office, he said. It authorizes payment. Hannah already confirmed the process. If you choose to accept under your terms, we can go together to submit it. If you say no, I leave with it. Layla's heart pounded. This was it. The moment where pride and opportunity stood facing each other. Layla looked at the envelope like it was fire. Then she thought of her mother's cracked hands. She thought of the years of not enough. She thought of the scholarship email sitting on her laptop like a door that would close forever if she didn't step through. Layla exhaled, slow, and said, We go together. Nabil didn't smile wide. He simply nodded, like a man who understood he had been given a chance, not a victory. They walked to the university together. Layla kept a half step ahead, guiding the route, controlling the pace. The campus was busy. Students in hoodies, backpacks, laughter, the smell of wet grass from sprinklers. Layla felt small and strong at the same time. At the finance office, They waited in a line behind a student arguing about late fees. A printer whirred in the background. Someone behind a glass window sighed loudly. The bureaucracy felt ordinary, grounding. When it was their turn, Layla spoke first, explaining the payment process. She did it in the calm, professional voice she used when interpreting. Clear, direct, polite. The staff member looked at Nabil, recognized him vaguely, then looked back at Layla. "You're the student?" "Yes," Layla said. The staff member handed over a form. Layla filled it out. Nabil signed where he needed to. The payment was processed, documented. No dramatic moment. No applause. Just paperwork and stamps and a receipt. When Layla walked out with the confirmation in her hand, her knees almost gave out, not from weakness, but from the sudden rush of relief. She leaned against a brick wall outside the building, breathing hard. Nabil stood a respectful distance away. He didn't crowd. He didn't touch. He waited. Layla looked at him. Eyes bright with tears, she finally allowed to sit there without shame. "Thank you," she said, voice small. Nabil nodded. "You are welcome." Layla's jaw tightened. "And don't ever do that research thing again." Nabil's mouth curved slightly. "I will not." Layla inhaled, steadying herself. "This doesn't mean I owe you." "I know," Nabil said quietly. "It means you allowed help on your terms. That is strength." Layla stared at him. For the first time, his words didn't feel like manipulation. They felt like recognition. Still, Layla didn't let herself melt into softness. She wasn't built for that. "I have to go," she said. Nabil nodded. "Safe travels," he said simply. Layla walked away with the receipt in her pocket, like a tiny piece of freedom. The weeks before departure moved fast. Packing, paperwork, last-minute tutoring sessions to save extra money. Miriam crying quietly while folding Layla's clothes, as if fabric could keep her daughter close. On the night before Layla left, Miriam cooked too much food, like she could feed Layla into staying. The kitchen smelled of spices and onions and home. Miriam kept wiping her hands on her apron, nervous. Layla sat at the table, watching her mother move. "You'll be fine," Miriam said, voice too bright. Layla nodded. "I know." Miriam finally sat, across from her, eyes wet. "You will speak all your languages," Miriam whispered. "But don't forget the first one." Layla frowned gently. "What's the first one?" Miriam touched her chest. "The one that says you belong." Layla's throat tightened. She reached across the table and held her mother's hands, rough and warm. "I won't forget," Layla said. Layla left the next morning. The airport smelled like perfume, fried food, and floor cleaner. The loudspeaker announced flights in a steady rhythm. Layla stood in line with her passport, heart pounding, suitcase rolling behind her. Miriam hugged her at the gate, too tight, then let go quickly, like she didn't want to embarrass her daughter in public. Miriam's eyes were glossy. Her lips trembled. Layla hugged her again, firmer. "I'll call," she promised. Miriam nodded, unable to speak. As Layla turned to walk away, she saw Hannah standing a few steps back, holding a small envelope. Hannah approached carefully. "Layla," Hannah said softly, "Mr. Al-Said asked me to give you this. He did not want to contact you directly." Layla's stomach tightened. "What is it?" Hannah held up the envelope. "A letter. Not money. Not a contract. A letter. If you don't want it, I will take it back." Layla hesitated, then took it. The envelope was light. "Thank you," Layla said. Hannah nodded. "Safe travels." Layla didn't open the letter until she was seated on the plane, seatbelt buckled, the cabin humming with that strange pre-flight tension. She held the envelope on her lap, staring at it. Then she opened it. Inside was a single page. No fancy paper. No gold. Just words. "I will not pretend my help makes me good. It only makes me responsible for my choices. You taught me that dignity cannot be purchased, only respected. Thank you for correcting me. Go build your life. Do not carry my shame with you. And if you ever return and want work, it will be offered only with your consent." Layla swallowed hard. Her eyes blurred. She blinked fast. Then she folded the letter and put it back in the envelope, tucking it into her bag like a quiet reminder that boundaries could exist even with powerful people. The plane took off, the city shrinking below like a map. Layla pressed her forehead lightly to the cool window and watched the world change shape. Months passed abroad. Layla lived in a small apartment with other students, shared a kitchen that always smelled like someone else's food, learned how to navigate new streets and unfamiliar grocery stores. She spoke languages daily until they stopped feeling like skills and started feeling like air. She struggled too. Some days she felt lonely enough it hurt. Some days she cried quietly into her pillow, missing her mother, missing the cramped kitchen, missing the comfort of knowing exactly where everything was. She failed at things. She misunderstood jokes. She misread social cues. She got lost. She learned. And slowly, she grew into herself, not the version of herself defined by survival, but the version defined by choice. Back home, Miriam's life shifted too. The restaurant's multilingual training program launched quietly. Staff were invited to attend sessions. Some mocked it at first. Some rolled their eyes. Some were grateful but suspicious. Miriam went to the first session with her arms crossed, skeptical. Then she saw something that made her blink. Nabil sat in the back of the room, not on a stage, not in a spotlight. He listened while Dr. Haddad spoke about dignity. He didn't interrupt. He didn't take credit. When staff shared experiences, he didn't defend himself. He nodded, absorbing discomfort like medicine. Miriam didn't trust him fully, but she noticed a change. One evening, after a session, Miriam approached Hannah, who was stacking chairs. "He really comes every time?" Miriam asked softly. Hannah looked up. "Yes," she said. "He does not like it, but he comes." Miriam frowned. Why would he do something he doesn't like? Hannah smiled slightly. Because he is learning that discomfort is not the enemy. Disrespect is. Miriam went home that night and sat at the kitchen table alone, looking at the empty chair where Layla usually sat. Miriam missed her daughter with a pain that felt like a bruise. But Miriam also felt pride, heavy, warm pride. When Layla finally returned home months later, the airport looked the same, but felt different because Layla was different. Miriam hugged her and sobbed this time, not caring who saw. Layla laughed and cried at once, holding her mother like she was the only anchor in a spinning world. A week after Layla returned, she got an email from Hannah. "Mr. Al-Sayed would like to invite you to a final session of the training program. Not as a guest of honor, as a participant. There is a scenario exercise in 5 languages. Your presence would help, only if you want." Layla stared at the email for a long time. She felt the old caution, the old fear of being pulled into someone else's world. But she also felt something else now, confidence. She had survived abroad. She had earned her own growth. She wasn't a fragile thing that could be owned by someone's gratitude. Layla replied, "I'll come, as long as I can leave whenever I want." Hannah replied, "Agreed." The final session was held in a modest training room, not a ballroom. Fluorescent lights, simple chairs, a whiteboard with markers that squeaked. Layla walked in and saw staff from different restaurants, servers, dishwashers, hosts, people with tired eyes and strong hands. Miriam sat among them, her posture upright, her face cautious but proud. Nabil stood at the side, speaking quietly with Dr. Haddad. When he saw Layla, he didn't rush toward her. He simply nodded, respectful. Layla nodded back. During the exercise, staff practiced handling misunderstandings with calm, respectful language. Layla played different roles, guest, staff, manager, switching languages smoothly, demonstrating how tone mattered as much as words. At one point, an arrogant guest role was played by a young man who enjoyed being dramatic. He laughed loudly and said, "You people never get it right." The room tensed. It hit too close to real. Layla's stomach tightened, remembering that chandelier-lit room. She stepped forward, eyes steady, and replied in clear English, "We are not you people. We are people, and if you want service, you can speak like one." Some staff chuckled nervously. Others nodded hard, like they had been waiting to hear that sentence for years. Then Layla repeated it in Arabic, then French, then Spanish, then Mandarin, each version carrying the same dignity, the same boundary. The room shifted, not into applause, but into something deeper, recognition. People sitting a little straighter. Layla glanced at Nabil. He wasn't smiling like a man claiming a victory. He looked thoughtful, humbled, present. After the session ended, people filed out slowly, talking quietly among themselves. Miriam stayed behind, gathering her bag. Layla walked to her mother, and Miriam squeezed her hand. "You did good," Miriam whispered. Layla's throat tightened. "So did you." Miriam nodded, eyes glossy. "I learned to speak up too." Layla turned and found Nabil standing by the door, waiting as if he didn't want to corner her. Layla walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. Nabil spoke first. "Thank you for coming." Layla nodded. "The program, it's good." Nabil's eyes flickered with something like relief. "It matters," he said. Layla studied him. "Do you understand now?" Nabil inhaled slowly. "I understand that respect is not an emotion," he said. "It is behavior. It is repetition. It is choosing restraint when pride wants to perform." Layla's lips pressed together. That was a good answer. Not a perfect one, but a real one. Nabil continued, "I also understand that help without consent is control." Layla's gaze held steady. "Yes." Silence settled between them, not awkward, just quiet, like a pause after music. Then Nabil said, "I laughed at your mother because I thought her world was small. But your world is wide." Layla's chest tightened. She didn't want compliments. She wanted truth. She replied, "My world became wide because my mother made it possible." Nabil nodded once, accepting the correction. "Yes," he said, "you are right." Layla felt something ease in her chest. Not trust, exactly. Something closer to peace. Nabil shifted, as if considering whether to say the next thing. Then he said, "If you ever want work, it will be offered with clear terms. If you never want to see me again, I will respect it." Layla looked at him, taking in the man he was now versus the man who laughed. "I don't know what I want yet," Layla said honestly. Nabil nodded. "That is allowed." Layla exhaled, a soft release. "One more thing," she said. "Yes." Layla's eyes sharpened, voice calm. "Never laugh at someone serving you again." Nabil's gaze didn't flinch. "Never," he said. Layla nodded once, then turned to leave with her mother. As they stepped into the evening air, the city felt loud and alive again. Cars, voices, the smell of street food, wind moving through trees. Miriam linked her arm through Layla's, something she hadn't done in years, like she was claiming her daughter in public without shame. Layla leaned slightly into her mother's warmth, and for the first time in a long time, she felt her body relax. The opening moment, the laughter, the humiliation, the sharp shock, had echoed again in that training room. But this time, it didn't end with someone swallowing shame. This time, it ended with a room full of people practicing respect, with a rich man learning restraint, with a waitress standing taller, with a daughter speaking 5 languages and still choosing the simplest one when it mattered most, the language of belonging. And when Layla looked at her mother's face in the streetlight, soft lines, tired eyes, a small smile, she realized something quietly powerful. Success was never the real gift. Presence was. And tonight she had it.